Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're here for the Web3 gaming panel. We're very excited to be with you today. We have 20 minutes. We're going to really keep the thing moving. But what I did want to say is Web3 gaming, what's the difference between Web3 gaming and Web2 gaming? So my personal definition is in Web2 gaming, the games own the players. And in Web3 gaming, the players own the game. So I think that's my little distinction that I wanted to make. So I wanted to relate really quickly and then go into round robin. But I think let's do the round robin first, which is let's do self-introduction. My name is Miko. I'm an investor with Gumi Crypto's Capital. Gumi is actually a game company in Japan. My partner took it public, and we basically have invested in seed stage, OpenSea, seed stage, Yield Guild games, and a whole bunch of other ones. So we're definitely excited to be here. So that's my self-introduction. So let's just go from left to right.
All right. My name is Dee. I'm on the Mysten Labs partnerships team. We're the builders behind this sweet network. I came from a Web2 background, started at Apple, then ByteDance, then Facebook Gaming, entered Web3 in like 2022. But yeah, super excited for the panel.
Hey guys, I'm Carra. I'm a partner on the crypto investment team at A16Z. I spend most of my time looking at the intersection between crypto and different kinds of games, but I also cover other media forms, including film, music, and IP, as well as anything to do with NFTs. I have a background in math, computer science, and economics, and I spent some time as a software engineer and then as a product manager in and around the game space before joining the firm.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Powell. I'm the head of product marketing at Immutable. Immutable is a Web3 gaming platform that makes it easy for game studios to integrate digital asset ownership into their games.
Great. So what I wanted to do is start with a Twitter conversation that I had with Hayden from Uniswap, which is he posted that, hey, when you add money to games, that means the games turn into either work or gambling, right? So it was a very downer type of tweet post, right? And part of what I was saying is really, my retort was that actually really good games kind of start looking a little bit like work, right? That people in games, they grind, like they perform work-like functions, but that a lot of the distinction is that games have rules and they're more fair than work. And work may be a little less fair, and that may be why people want the escape of games, right? So I guess to me, what I'd love to open to the panel, and I don't really do round robin questions. I really want the panel to be reasonably assertive and jump in, but I'd love to kind of just open with a question about what happens when you throw money into games, and could it possibly be more fun? And if so, how? Or if not, then you could just be like, no, I don't think so. Money's bad. Carra?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Something that I hear a lot of our games founders talk about is like what makes a fun game. And universally, I hear three things. One is there have to be stakes. You have to care about the game world. You have to care about the context that these assets live in. The second thing I hear is there needs to be chaos. Human beings tend toward order. As a game maker, you want to sculpt agency and you want to sculpt chaos. And the last thing I hear is affinity. Obviously, in crypto, you get a little bit of a hyperdrive on all three of these fronts. If you do it really well, you can increase the stakes, you can increase the chaos, and you can increase the level of affinity people feel for these environments. But it takes like a really fine-tuned, excellent game designer or a lot of experiments being run in order to find that balance. So I think it's not a normative thing. I think that this technology has the potential to like really dial up the volume on the three things that are like really important for making great games. I don't think like blockchains make things normatively good or bad either way. I just think that when you add ownership into the equation, people can get a lot more invested. Like modders, builders, user-generated content can get a lot more serious, and people will invest a lot more time into creating high-quality work because they know that they're not going to get rugged by the platform.
I agree. I think Web3 technology is really serves as this validation to, the things that you have already been doing. You're grinding, you're playing, thousands of hours of Animal Crossing, and in Chinese we use the word you're using your liver to play the game. You're already doing all of that. You're building communities around the game, and at the end of the day, Web3 technology really powers real fun games to bring them closer to their community, to give a sense of validation, a sense of strong ownership to those people who are enjoying the games. And in return, they will see higher retention or lower cost when it comes to retention, as well as lower churn rates, so on and so forth.
So I wanna provide a retort, right? Because the retort that I think is pretty valid, that I've heard actually, is that blockchain is beautiful and wonderful by scaling, essentially solving trust problems, right? So in a sense, the issue that I think is fair to say is that players tend to trust games and game engines, right? So there's very few cases where players actually have a real grinding, horrific problem that they got rug pulled by the game. So oftentimes players are reasonably satisfied with Web2 game ownership, right? That I own something, right? So I think that in a way that's a legitimate concern. So I'm wondering, if anyone has anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think, and this touches on your first question as well, right? But when we're transitioning the gaming industry from really a one-sided marketplace where users are paying $5 for a skin or an item, right, into an actual thriving economy, I guess that could be defined as work, but it's that mindset shift from being a player to being an owner. Right? And now there's economic value there. And not only that, but you're actually more engaged as a community member. You're more passionate. You have skin in the game, pun intended. And that's ultimately going to make a more passionate community of players who are willing to spend more in your game. So there's an incentive from the game studio side. And then there's also economic incentive from the player side, which creates that thriving economy.
And I would actually push back. I think there are lots of cases in which gamers feel disenfranchised. It tends to manifest as gamer rage on forums, right? When people are really angry at Diablo for ruining their auction house, when people are really angry at RuneScape for obliterating all their gold when they're using it as currency in replacement for a lot of the hyperinflationary currencies in 2008 Argentina, right? I think it's a privileged position to say that gamers trust the game. It's very specific pockets of gamers who trust the game. There are plenty of enraged gamers who would probably go for a more credibly neutral platform if it were available, and certainly modders who create their own servers. They're not seeing any of the fruits of their labors. And I think there's a great quote from my partner Chris's book, which is, developers know better than to build businesses on quicksand. And I think part of the reason why you don't see this kind of flourishing creativity is because people know that they can get rugged.
Yes, and I do think that that does allow me to shout out a little bit of the project of Farcaster, right? Because Chris was talking about Farcaster in that context, which is you build on social media like Twitter and you get rugged, right? Whereas if you build on Farcaster, you're actually safe, right? So that's an amazing difference, and we'll see a lot of juice there. To throw the ball back to you again, though, one of the things we were talking about is work, right? Which is it work, right? Are games work? And games kind of are work, and it's fine, right? If, for example, CCP Games, the creator of EVE Online, right? If you're managing a guild, fleet, planet, or whatever, right? You're actually a very high-level manager, right? You're actually billions of dollars of in-game currencies of whatever credits, right? But to me, Hilmar said something very interesting, which is he said something that aligns with what Herman Narula said in Virtual Societies, which is what he said is basically that in essence, games and work kind of flow together, right? And Hilmar said something very interesting, which is he said that my job is to make games that are more compelling than real life. And I think EVE Online does that for some players. So I just want to ask you kind of how you look at CCP Games, EVE Online, and the work they're doing.
Yeah, so for those who don't have context, CCP Games is the maker of the legendary game EVE Online, which was one of the very first MMOs ever. It has been a persistent game, so it's existed since its origination in, I think, 2003. And over the last 20+ years, people have been building billions of objects in this game because it feels like a real economy. Within that game, there are corporations, which are the sort of guild equivalent. There are lots and lots of different roles that corporations can make for lots of different kinds of players. When we went to FanFest in Iceland a couple years ago, I met this dude, Oz, who is running a multi-million-dollar hedge fund in EVE. There's no trust guarantees. People just send him money, and he manages it with the hope that they get it back. And you can imagine, if that's fun for somebody in the context of this game, if you offered guarantees, if you offered escrow, if you offered any sort of belief that he was going to return your money, this kind of thing could become a real job. And it would be just as enjoyable for him in that universe as it is for him right now. I think, games are simulation engines. They're simulations of how people interact with each other, of governance, of human behavior. And stuff that starts out looking like a toy, Chris also says this, I'm just going to steal all of his lines, end up becoming some of the most important advancements in internet technologies. I think a great example is sort of GPUs. GPUs were originally just for gamers, and now it's sort of the back of all of scientific computing. And I think there's probably a lot of opportunity in crypto, too, for these kinds of simulation games to tell us a lot about monetary policy and governance and human agent interaction.
Yeah, I definitely think that it's an exciting frontier. One of the big questions that I have, especially since we have two kind of platform providers, right? Immutable and Mysten Labs represented on stage. I'd love to kind of hear from platform providers. Dee, maybe you can go first to really talk about the games that you're the most excited about that have come to your platform, and really try to explain what is it that you're excited about with respect to these games.
Yeah,
Dee first.
I think the games coming that are most exciting to us are really, at the end of the day, it's really good games that are attractive to players.
Looking for example.
So, for example, we have one studio called Ember Studio. They're planning to launch the game called E4C Final Salvation. The game will be launching in H1 this year, and I think what the company has been focusing really on this, right now, is really to fine-tune their in-game kind of activity. Is really, how do I continuously engage with these players who are very interested in PvP, PvE, those type of aspects. And then on top of that, think about what's the right balance should I think about when it comes to tokenizing my in-game assets and leverage the technology Web3, for example, the Sui network provides to help them enable those asset ownership with their community and bring them and the community closer to each other.
How about Immutable? What are you excited about in the pipeline? What are the games? What kind of genre? And tell me what you think is going to work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so at this point in time, Immutable has roughly 270 well-funded games that are building on our platform. And we believe 2024 is going to be an extremely exciting year for games going live. And we have Shardbound, Metalcore, Blast Royale actually just hit 400,000 downloads and installs. We have Treeverse, Capsule Heroes, Guild of Guardians, which actually we have over 1 million pre-reg users for that as well. So we have a whole slew of games that are set to go live over the next 6 months. So it's going to be a really exciting time, and those span different genres. And we're still working on tweaking the different product flows.
Shardbound is a tradable card game?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I know them.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. Excited for that one.
Yeah, I think 2024 is going to be a really interesting year because the life cycle for game development is so long. And we have seen the wave of play to earn, so on and so forth, from the previous cycle. And this year is really going to be exciting, where we're going to see more and more games focusing on gameplay, focusing on true asset ownership.
Yeah, so in addition to having two platforms on stage, we also have two VCs on stage. And one of the things that's interesting about kind of upcoming games that I just want to put a quick plug in is I'm really excited about actually a co-investment, which is Roboto Games. So we did Roboto Games, with A16Z, and our excitement is that they're doing bite-sized survival and crafting MMO, right? So this very kind of casual format and very, very short session times, but also the ability to kind of tap into the survival genre and the base building genre, I think is pretty exciting. So I think from a genre perspective, I'm excited about that. So I guess throw back to you, Carra, what genres or what projects specifically are you most excited about?
I'm going to not be specific. I'm just going to reject that question. What I will say is I think we're at one of the most exciting periods in the life cycle of any new computing paradigm. In the last year or so, builders have been really focused on infrastructure advancements, and I think it's happened, like compute has scaled much more quickly than anyone has expected on blockchains. And while it's easy to look around and think, like, where are all the games? I think this is actually the leading indicator to the floodgates opening for lots more experimentation. Because it's not just about, like, do you have the throughput to process all of these actions on chain? In order to make things ergonomic for developers, you need to have way more extra compute. In order for React to have existed on top of JavaScript, machines had to have, like, way extra bandwidth. And I think the same is true of, like, on top of raw solidity, in order for lots of different hobbyist developers to start running experiments in building games, you need to have game engines. You need to have libraries. You need to have frameworks. You need to make it so easy for people to spin up something on the weekend and for college students to go to a hackathon and build a great game. And I think we're finally getting to that point where it's not just that we have enough bandwidth to complete all of this logic on chain. We also have the bandwidth to make it easy for developers to run experiments. And I think that that's going to be the full force multiplier. I think that's a lot more high leverage than just like, can we process that many transactions? It's like, can we exponentiate the number of experiments that we're running? And I think that's what's going to be so crazy about this cycle is like, we don't know what genre is going to work. It's probably out there somewhere. But if we have 1 million developers running those experiments, we're more likely to find it than if we've got 10,000 developers.
And I do want to put a plug in there, which is that the idea of stimulating a developer ecosystem is definitely not unfamiliar to our platform partners here on stage, right? Which is that you can have a tokenized ecosystem fund, you can boost these developers, right? But the thing that I think Carra is saying that I'm super excited about is if you can increase the number of developers by increasing the tool chain and the ease of development, right? The thing that I think is so interesting about that is that the boundary between UGC, user-generated content, and developer-generated content gets very thin, especially as you see things like generative AI boosting things like 3D modeling or creating much more ability to kind of create assets and objects that could be manifest as NFT, right? So I think that we are about to see kind of a laundry spin cycle around creativity in this space. And so I do think 1,000 flowers can bloom.
I think that's the natural evolution of games. And this is true of like every majorly centralized gate-kept industry, right? Like film industry people did not take YouTube seriously. They did not see that as threatening. Like, classic Hollywood entertainment did not take influencers seriously. But what these platforms allowed individuals to do was you can become your own filmmaker on YouTube. You can become your own influencer on Instagram. And people will become their own game makers on crypto rails.
Yeah, I'll let the platforms have the final say. I think we're really at the time, so please go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I think Carra is exactly correct, right? That's kind of the sequencing of operations where the tooling, the APIs, the SDKs have to be there to make it accessible for devs who are already building in Unity, in Unreal. Then the content comes, right? And we're just kind of at that floodgate moment where there's going to be a bunch of great, compelling, engaging content going live, and then the users will come, right? So we talk about onboarding the masses. It's going to come from compelling content. It's not going to come from financial speculation or new technology for the sake of new tech. It will become because people actually want to play these games.
D, final word?
That is true. I think also one thing to mention is that when we talk about Web3 gaming, we kind of unnecessarily put ourselves into a niche. At the end of the day, it's really having the powerful tools that makes it very simple for developers to build their game, leveraging the Web3 technology through simple clicks in an SDK in a backend, so that they can get to market more easily. They can visualize and envision their like the way that they want to engage with their community in a new way, in a more intimate way, much more easy.
Definitely makes a ton of sense. What I do want to say is just a quick response to the idea that it isn't about the money. But the thing that's really interesting is that I also believe that crypto can reinvent the game industry, right? And that the thing that I think happens when we have a blow off top in something like Ether, right, is that ultra super whales in Ether become game producers, right? And they basically roll into town and they bankroll all these Web3 games. So the tail, actually, things like Bitcoin price, can wag the dog of gaming and can transform the entire game industry. So, it's a little bit of a counterpoint to your perspective, which is it's not about the money, but the money actually is part of it. It's part. The industry needs a reinvention, and we are going to reinvent the industry of gaming.
Thank you guys. That was great. Important stuff. I can't wait to play my next set of games.